Hey guys, it's Valdo here, and I want to show you guys what I've been up to lately in Incursion. And surprise, surprise, it's not a trapper. I know, what the fuck? Well, I mean, I've got a bit behind that, and I'll talk about that towards the end of this video. But let's just get right into it. I'll show you guys a quick Tier 1 lookout, mostly because your boy just got on the maps. I'm pretty behind, I'll be fair. Um, but yeah, right now I'm playing Cold Snap. It's pretty dope, but let's get cooking here. Takes a bit of wind up though. Just kidding. Look how fucking beautiful this is. And he's gone. See, watch how quickly this boss fucking drops. Wow. Ha! I know it's tier 1, it's not a big deal. But yeah, that's kind of Cold Snap. It feels amazing if you guys couldn't tell. Um and yeah, it's pretty sweet. Anyways, we'll go into what it is. So we have Cold Snap, Ice Bite, Spell Cascade, which is the MVP, Hypothermia, Efficacy, and Control Destruction. So, a quick thing about Cold Snap, if you did not know, it has been changed. So, instead of it being a basic skill where you smack the ground with a snap of cold, um, now it creates an AoE of ice that grows after the initial smack. So, essentially, it is also a damage over time skill, which melts the enemy and chills them, which is pretty sick. It's pretty cool skill. I mean, I actually was pretty impressed by the showcase as well. But I'm just gonna be the first one to tell you guys that is, I guess if you've seen a showcase of it, before the actual release of the skill, it does a lot less upfront damage, and a lot of the damage has been packed into the AOE. I mean, I'm sorry, the damage over time. And the sexy cold ground you see here has a good amount of damage over time. But the cool thing is with Spell Cascade, I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. The AOE, um, the AOE of the initial smack does overlap. That is true. That is 100% true. The AOE of the grounded damage over time actually I think is overlapping as well. It's doing quite a bit more damage than I expected to, and it does a lot more than I guess it should do. So it's doing about 5,920 without buffs and reduced stats and shit. It does about 6,000 damage a second. That of course would double to 6,000 damage a second if they're standing between two cold spots. And then Frostbomb would further augment. Orb of Storms linked to Arcane Surge would further do that, and then Val Cold Snap would have its own 13,000 cold damage over time. That would also be the same shit. Anyways, the other links. Spell Cascade for my Frost Bomb, quite sexual, very cool. This is like the MVP of the build. Also, it gives a slight amount of damage boost. Not a slight, but a massive amount of damage. But it also itself does a decent amount. Increased duration so that we have the buff debuff on the opponent for a longer. And then we have Arcane Surge, which is what it sounds like. I actually need to fix this because I overleveled it. But generally, Arcane Surge just gives us more spell damage and cast speed and mana regen, which we need in our build. And then we have Orb of Storms linked to Curse on Hit, linked to increased crits and Frostbite. Pretty generic setup, but it's what it sounds like. Basically, throw this up, get my Elemental Overload, get my Frostbite off. Now, another thing to kind of talk about really quick about Orb of Storms is when I transition this build into power charges instead of frenzy charges, which I'm still contemplating if that's required. In those situations, that would mean that we would want to use power charge on crit instead. And then I'll have to find a way for frostbite. But that is a very niche scenario that may or may not happen. Just a heads up, that's how I plan on generating power charges if I need to. But as of right now, I've yet to face a boss that has been able to survive anything that I've thrown at them. And by that I mean like quite literally, I have melted every boss in the game and it's barely touched me. Even Kitava couldn't do anything. But that's not really a big feat, I'll be fair. Really not a big deal. But it does attest to the power of Chill, Freezing, and Cold Snap. And then we also have the Clarity and Herald of Ice. Herald of Ice is actually completely optional. I'm using it for higher AoE coverage, but at the same time, I'm also using it for the absolute style points. And if you're not using it, I'm sorry, but Herald of Ice is just cool points. And then we have LA Prolif, which is I was attempting to use it. It just lowers the damage. And it's I don't know. I just don't think it's required. The chance to freeze is nice on it though. That's what I liked about it. And then that's kind of it. In terms of skills. And then I just use shield charge. And I want to talk about Terran Shiver. Terran Shiver is the original unique for this build, is what I planned on using initially. And Terran Shiver is a staff that gives you cold damage, spell damage, +2 to cold skills in your socketed into it. And it gives you chance to freeze and, did I say cast speed? I meant cast speed. And it also gives a more damage multiplier, 20%, to enemies that are frozen. And that is completely useless on trash mobs. But it is quite useful against bosses if you're able to freeze them. I find it even more difficult to freeze with this skill because the damage for the initial hit is not high enough to freeze that easily, although we have a high chance to freeze. I kind of was using it for a bit, just felt like the damage wasn't there, so I switched to this. Really, you can kind of explore that yourself, but I find that the shield and the stick are much better. And besides that, our gear is quite basic, nothing special. The premier uniques here are going to be Adziri's Foible, just for mana sustain. We are a Mind Over Matter build and a Trickster, so this is quite good. Not required for really any of you guys, but I do quite enjoy this unique. It solves a lot of problems. And then Dance of the Offered. So this is actually not supposed to be Dance of the Offered. This is supposed to be Omeokon, which I do have my fancy Vial of the Ritual right here, which I used to upgrade it. I guess I'm supposed to have a high level sacrifice room, and then I stick the boots in there with it and pray that it doesn't destroy it for whatever reason. But I also got a pretty sick enchant, which is regenerate 1% life and mana if you were hit recently, which is very useful and quite fitting for the boots that I would be wearing because they will soon degen the shit out of my mana. That's kind of the idea. And of course Tabula, which should be a Cloak of the Defiance, but as of right now I don't really have that. I don't really have a way to 6 link that, so not gonna happen right now. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. I mean, the build has been pretty fruitful. I felt really good playing it. Val Cold Snap is pretty good, and I guess I should explain that too. Val Cold Snap was changed as well for obvious reasons. Now what it does is it smacks you one big time, and when that happens, the Val Cold Snap will freeze you 100% of the time. It always freezes unless you're immune to freeze. And then after freezing you, it'll then do a massive 13,000 damage over time, every second. and it also generates frenzy charges every second, so it's great for single target. It also assists in cold snap being single target as well. The skill itself is very utility based. You can use it like righteous fire, because if you guys could not tell, when I was using it, while it's on, it follows you, so it acts as if it were like a righteous fire aura around you. So it's quite good, but that's the general idea. I like Val Cold Snap. It is more utility than it is damage, but in the early levels and even right now, it does a shit ton of damage to the boss as it stacks with your current um, grounded ice from Cold Snap, which is pretty sweet. So what's cool about this build is that how it feels is great, as you can tell. But when you actually finally get to single target after you've been clearing so godlike, you just throw your everything down, and you throw, your Orbistorin's Arcane Search, throw down your Frost Bombs, and then activate your Val Cold Snap, and then Cold Snap away. Now, I know a lot of people aren't super into that type of playstyle, but I love rotating. I really enjoy rotating. I like this engaging feeling of I'm clicking my buttons for a reason and not just holding my right click down just to spam whatever my auto attack is. That's just my personal preference in playing. And I'm not against that type of gameplay. I love that type of gameplay too, but I really do like to be involved with the game in itself. So yeah, and that's what I've been up to, guys. If you guys have any questions really about my build, you guys can go ahead and put it in the comments. Nothing is set in stone for this build right now. None of this is set in stone. I'm just merely testing things, moving nodes around, changing things by quite a bit, and that's really just that in general. Um, yeah. So I mean, if anything, guys, expect to see more from this build. I hope I can really push a little bit harder with this. Um, and I guess I'll see you guys later. Peace.